on? Yes, good. So good to be here, and thank you for the invitation to be here on Christmas Sunday. What an amazing time. Over the years, I often found it's wonderful to be able to preach in the Christmas season, but I've actually found it rather difficult in some ways because the stories become so familiar to us. Sometimes it just kind of flies over our heads, and we forget that these were real historical events that were first witnessed by real people who were not expecting these things to happen. And so we sing the song, which I love, Angels We Have Heard on High, sweetly singing o'er the plain, you know. And it wasn't a sweetly singing o'er the plain that the shepherds experienced. It was this stunning, shocking event. They were scared to death, quaking their boots, and it was just this amazing event. And all of the events of the Christmas season are like that. They were not expected in the way they came about. And so they would have set people back on their heels and in wonder. And this is true of the story we look at today. Years back, I went to a pastor's conference. A woman by the name of Jill Briscoe was speaking, and she retold a gospel story. And she said she loved to look around the corners of the story. And that's what I've loved to do in the Christmas season especially, to try and get inside the experience of some of the people that were there. So that's what I'm going to do this morning. The story that we're focusing on about the three kings, and we don't know that there were three different kinds of gifts, but there may have been multiple kings. This story is actually out of order because it doesn't happen now. It happens sometime over the next year or year and a half. We often have the nativity scene with Mary and Joseph, Jesus in the manger, the shepherds there, the angels up above, and the wise men there as well, but it didn't happen like that. The wise men didn't arrive till sometime later. Jesus and his parents were still in Bethlehem at that point, but they weren't in the stable. He wasn't in the manger. It was a different scene at that point. People have spent much time trying to figure out exactly what it was that the wise men saw in the sky. And we need to talk a little bit about the dates, first of all. We think of 0 BC as the year in which Jesus was born, but it actually wasn't. The monk that set our calendar in place centuries later got the calculations wrong, because King Herod the Great actually died in what we would now call 4 BC. And he was living when Jesus was born. So likely Jesus was born 2 or 3 years earlier, perhaps likely in 7 BC. And in that year, there are a number of astronomical signs that we have record of that were the likely source of what the wise men saw. And so I'm going to tell the story from that point of view, assuming that that's true. It may have been something else, but they saw something. The other thing you need to know is that in the Greek text, the word that is translated into English as star is not singular like we have in English. It can cover a whole range of sightings in the sky, conjunction of planets or a constellation. It's not necessarily a single star. So again, I'm going to tell the story from that point of view. So you need to suspend reality for the moment and get into your imagination and assume that I am dressed as someone would have been in the first century. This is all the costume you get, but I'm going to take the glasses off because they didn't have glasses back then. And I'd like you to get into the story of this remarkable event. I'm the servant of a regal man, a princely man, though not a prince. Good would describe him well, though without color. Kindly would give you that touch of warmth, though perhaps too much. Strong, almost austere, would communicate that solid core of seemingly immovable determination to pursue truth and knowledge, commanding allegiance in the quest. Inquisitive would tell you the power of his mind to search out and discover and unravel what is unknown, piercing through what must remain mysterious still to the likes of me. Mysterious. Now that's a word to summarize my master. As a delver into mysteries, he often seems an apt description for the Magi as a whole, the priestly caste here in Persia, interpreters of dreams, unravelers of mysteries. I count myself lucky to be servant to such a one. To be sure, not everywhere is Magi a name of honor. There are charlatans and petty conjurers, those who delve into black arts, men of vile character without moral grounding. But here in Persia, such is the esteem of the Magi that no one is deemed worthy to become king who has not first mastered the understanding and discipline of this caste. Their learning is great, their insight unparalleled. I've met many, for my master's home is often a gathering place for the learned. And I would serve them one after another, wading through their talk over the delicacies of dinner and the teasing out of riddles as they lingered over fruit and wine and close conversations extending into the early hours of the morning. And ever the stars. Invariably, the evenings would end with consultations on the rooftop garden. Night air pleasant on upturned faces. Magi examining the configurations of the stars, each commenting in turn, welcoming constellations as old friends. All things spiritual were also of interest to my master and his colleagues. From whatever ends of the world they came, rumors of the gods and their workings intrigued them, piqued their interest. Prophecies of all kinds and from all sources, and anything to do with the great movements of time and history. And so, among others, the rumors that were rife about Judea caught their attention. There was a growing expectation traveling throughout the circles of the learned that there would soon arise rulers in Judea who would make themselves masters of all things, acquiring universal empire. This news seemed to arise unbidden, permeating the collective atmosphere, growing in intensity. Such a pervasive rumor did not go unnoticed. And then the sky changed. I remember the night. It was the late spring of that year, an evening of much conversation over food and wine. They retired to the rooftop, and then they saw it. In the night sky, more apparent to their eyes than mine, was a conjunction of planets, Jupiter and Saturn, their union taking place in that part of the sky known as the great constellation of the fish. Such a dance by these two giants had never before been seen by any of the eyes on the rooftop that night. Indeed, pieces of the conversation that flowed from their lips informed me that such an occurrence could not have occurred for many, many hundreds of years. Never have I seen such a gathering so animated. My own master was most agitated, inquisitiveness pressing him to recite the information he knew in order to elicit what he did not. Jupiter is the planet of royalty, he intoned, and Saturn has long been held to represent Israel. Can this sign mean anything other than a new king rising among the Jewish people? Another of the Magi, old, ordinarily stately in his learning, tumbled forth words in frustrated eagerness. In the sky, there it is in the fish, right where the sun ends its old course and makes a new beginning. Don't you see? This ruler is not any ruler. This is a ruler for the last days who will make all things new. Eyes riveted in that corner of the sky, the words with the stars hung in the very air. A king of kings rising in Israel? A king for the last days? Could it be? Well, the conversation extended late that night. They reconvened the night following, and again the next. Dinner itself was served on the rooftop. The sky was studied, cataloged afresh. The conjunction only lasted that one evening, but its echoes reverberated night after night. Their decision was taken easily. It seemed so obvious, so inevitable. These were men devoted to learning, devoted to teasing out mysteries. They were committed to mapping not just the stars, but the course of divine influence in the affairs of men. How could they back away from such an opportunity, such a calling? Bags were packed for Judea. Each of the Magi determined to go, each with his own retinue of camels and provisions and servants galore. I accompanied my master, ready for the arduous journey. For arduous it would be. But my master said, having sought wisdom from the stars, how could I stay home when they speak of a last days event impacting all peoples? And how could I fail to welcome this sovereign whose kingdom will be established whether I bow the knee or not? What fool would I be not to pay him? These Magi lived their convictions, bringing with them exquisite gifts to place before the king. Gifts of honor and reverence, wealth and devotion. And so we traveled, a rich entourage, pressing ever forward, seeking Israel, seeking the king. By the time we had prepared for departure and then set out and traveled and then stopped and set camp and then packed up and traveled more again and again and again, the summer was past and we were into early fall. We neared Israel and its capital city of Jerusalem. But ever our eyes were on the night sky, feeling still the surprise of that first night, seeking further signs. Night after night we watched. And then it came. The conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which had not visited the sky for centuries, now made its second appearance in less than 6 months, gracing our eyes as we looked in the direction of the fish once again. My master reveled in the moment, getting little sleep that night in camp, soaking up the sight and wonder of it all. That second conjunction energized our flagging spirits, speeding us on toward Jerusalem, seeing us through the city gates soon thereafter. So sure were my master and his colleagues of the signs and stars, the message in the sky, that little thought had been given to this portion of the quest. Wouldn't news of such a king announced by heaven be easy to gather? But our inquiries met with blank faces, indeed furtive glances. Was it fear in the eyes we encountered? Does King Herod know of your inquiries? We were asked again and again. Herod, so-called the Great. The rumors we pieced together helped us understand the fear-filled eyes. Here was a man to inspire fear, even in his own family. Here was a king who had commended himself to the conquering Romans, receiving from them the designation King of the Jews, gaining for himself a position that his own lineage could never have supported, for Herod was himself but a half-Jew, and certainly did not come from the royal line of the Hasmoneans. Forcibly, he had married into that family. And then, overcome by suspicions, he had executed successive family members, eventually sending his own wife to her death. That had been years ago, but shortly before we arrived, Herod's suspicions were roused again by the two sons of that same marriage, his own sons, his designated heirs. Their executions had been the result. And so our inquiries created deep tension, and they led us to Herod, or at least to his palace. Our question was passed along to him, where is the one who has been born, King of the Jews? I can only imagine now the anxious disruption that simple question provoked. So Herod assembled a council of such religious and spiritual leaders as Jerusalem then possessed. The question was put to them as to the expected birthplace of such a king. These men of learning had no doubt of the answer. Bethlehem, they said. They quoted a prophecy from the Jewish scriptures about this town just a short distance south of Jerusalem. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. It's what my master had seen in the stars. King Herod himself then granted us audience, but secretly. I attended on my master, fearing the worst. But we were greeted warmly. Herod was most gracious, eagerly inquiring for more information about this newly born king. What did we know? And exactly when was it that the child had been born, that the star had first appeared? Magi entered in the spirit of consultation, ever quick to re-examine their own findings, seeking further insight. But Herod seemed too eager, almost greedy for information. Go at once and make a careful search for this child, he said. As soon as you find him, come back and tell me. I too want to go and worship him. We went. And in the night sky, wonder of wonders, for the third time in that single year, the unexpected conjunction of planets made its appearance once more. Jupiter, royal Jupiter, and Saturn of the Israelites, dancing together in the house of the fish, joyfully proclaiming the last day's rule of a newborn king. We sped on, heaven's sign seeming to hang right over the location of Bethlehem before us, the place where the child was. But arriving in Bethlehem, we found ourselves puzzled. Whatever splendor Jerusalem may have had certainly was not represented here. Where could such a royal child have taken up residence? We made inquiry. But this time, no blank faces greeted us. Rather, faces of wonder, spilling forth news of a child born earlier in the year, heralded by angels, greeted by shepherds. They directed us to a house, small, rough, worn, where a young family resided. We were ushered in, needing to take it by turns, the single room cramped and spare, almost tentative in appearance. My master was among the first. I followed, attending. What greeted my eyes was nothing of apparent royalty, nothing of power or rank, nothing to impress, except in sheer simplicity and peace. The mother's face, surprised, yet serene, soaked it all in. Her husband, alert with gentle strength, attended her every move. And the child, beautiful, small, vulnerable, lay contentedly on her lap. so ordinary. Is this what we came to see? But my master ahead of me sank to his knees. One by one, each of the Magi present squeezed to the floor, their lavish garments crumpling round them, stretching a rich carpet before the child, the king. I was simply pressed back against the dirt wall. And as I watched, gifts were brought forward. Gifts for a king. Gold, token of the world's wealth. Frankincense, accoutrement of worship. And myrrh, exquisite, fragrant ointment for embalming the dead. Light glinted from the gold. The close air filled with a sweet, aromatic offertory. The child stirred and slept again, comfortable in his place, commanding all attention, unaffected by the press of the world. And what will this child be? And what path will he walk? How will he take such poverty and turn it to power? What will these last days bring? And how will he rule them? What difference will this birth make? We never did return to Herod. These Magi, interpreters of dreams, were wakened in the night with divine messages warning them to avoid Herod and return home by another route. And so we did. The dream itself accentuating the message of the stars. And en route home, my master recited often a poem he had gleaned in Jerusalem from the Jewish scriptures, ancient prophecy waiting long years for fulfillment. He spoke it and sang it and turned it over and over again in his mind. And each time I heard it, I knew that we ourselves were caught up in it. For the ancient word spoken to Israel embraces us all. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness is over the earth, and thick darkness covers the people. But the Lord rises upon you. His glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn.